Good evening. Once again, it is my privilege and pleasure to come and spend these few moments of your time. As we have said for so long, many things are happening, and one always shall we say, that as the storm arises, there is, shall we say, a calm before, and then as the, shall we say, storm breaks out, the new material, shall we say, is beginning to shine through. A new dawn comes. The new day brings with it much to be thankful for. That is
Thank you. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to speak with you today. Today I'd really like to have a conversation about health. First of all, I'd like to understand why some people suffer from more health ailments where others tend to not. Can you talk to us a bit about that?
Shall we say there are multiple reasons and multiple causes of the whole nature of, shall we say, physical existence, as if there is both paradoxically an individual reality and a shared reality. As such, as, shall we say, one descends through the various realms of vibrations that move something from, shall we say, within the non-physical realm into the physical. And not every realm, shall we say, is not attached in some fashion. The fields of influence from, shall we say, more subtle vibratory realms interfere with and support the physical manifestation. Shall we say then, if one opens oneself to, shall we say, elements that are out of integrity with the overall evolutionary force, then one often finds there are somewhat what are called health challenges. However, many of the health challenges carry with them advantages that are, shall we say, less seen in the overall framework. In other words, quite often modern medicine interferes to solve, shall we say, one health crisis, and in reality creates another. And sometimes, shall we say, the other crisis that is on a more subtle level is far more dangerous to the overall life. Now, when I say overall life, I am not referring to physical life, but the overall life structure that continues and has always resonated as a strong pulse, as it were. I think that, shall we say, brings up more questions than it does answers. So because it is better then that you focus it with new questions that, shall we say, targets your audience's interest. I don't want to leave someone behind.
Okay, fair enough. So when you talked about we're opening oneself to the elements of, out of integrity with the evolutionary force, is this about the resistance to the flow of the collective? Is this if we're resisting the overall collective?
Many times, let me try and make this succinct. Many times there is what has been referred to, shall we say, in your book of instruction as the sins of nature, the sinfulness of humankind, the qualities of sin. And it is implied, shall we say, that if one sins, then it invokes what is called the wrath of God. Do you understand? These are references made in a way that many or most humankind can relate to in some fashion. Let us put it this: if one holds negative thoughts, shall we say, to a different a person of a different culture, then you open up gateways in one's own psyche. And shall we say, there are what are often referred to as inorganic forms. These are often also known as psychic entities and so forth that latch on. Such beings as such do not occupy a physicality as such, so they do not feed on physical food, as you know it. They feed on energetic food.
Okay.
So if one, shall we say, opens the door disliking somebody for whatever reasons, whatever differences one perceives they have, shall we say, then one opens the doorway for food for such elementary beings which will latch on and suckle, of course. And in doing so, they will provoke greater forms. Shall we say, they will begin to evoke even greater dislike and eventually hatred, which of course is an exact increase of the energetic flow. So they feed more and more of the body's energy. One begins to become depleted, and as such, one will also maintain that one's personal depletion of energy is due to the very thing that you hate. In other words, more and more of the energy is fed to the inorganic being, which grows in size, grows in importance until it consumes one's whole energetic reserve. As such a reserve is, shall we say, consumed, one will find it harder to get up in the morning, one will find it harder to hold a positive attitude, depressions and mental disturbances increase, and eventually, under, shall we say, the worst of conditions, one might begin to take actions and violence against that which is seen to be the source of the problem. You understand? So the sin that was warned against is indeed invoking the wrath of God. In other words, everything has consequence. So, shall we say, if you open yourself up to, shall we look at the other side of this, if one starts to feel that one wants more of something, then you open the door to desire. And the more you desire, the more the non-organic entities attach, and so on. So then you become addicted to the need, as if you are feeding something inside of yourself, then, shall we say, something external that has attached itself to the energetic system. Is what you would call a psychic parasite.
Yeah.
And as such, each one of these, in whatever way, depletes the energy of the system. And of course, the energy of the system opens itself up to reactions and loss of determination, loss of ability to defend itself. So then you could say these are also viral in that, shall we say, people of like mind collect together, and as such pass on their very dislikes and desires to each other. So it becomes almost as if you pass on the viral infections. You understand that even your technology has such fashions. In other words, shall we take an example? If you become addicted, shall we say, to the pornography, then you are opening yourself up to the many viral attacks that are attached to such positions. You understand, then you cannot protect yourself, and so pass on the very same patterns to the next one in the chain, as it were. That is how things spread. Proximity, you understand, and that was always the case in, shall we say, village communities and so forth.
So if the negative thoughts are opening a gateway in order for these entities, could it be negative thoughts of self? So if we are having negative thoughts that may lead to some level of dislike or hatred for self?
Of course. That is often more obviously the case. Many people project their self-disgust out onto others. And so, in effect, they are opening the gateway of both sides of the feeding. Frenzy, you understand, shall we say, there are parallels in nature to, shall we say, show such patterns. That is, the frenzies of feeding so often associated with your sharks and with your hyenas and so forth. The bird world also has the same. Even the bats have, shall we say, feeding frenzies of that which is captured. You
So
understand?
how can we find out then if we are experiencing such entities, and if so, what can we do to resolve these issues in our own lives?
First of all, always one has to discover where you come from. You understand where is, shall we say, the center of your being. And when you discover the center, you realize with it that you are the same as everyone else.
Yeah.
There is no one that is separate. You are one with the whole of the creation. Then you begin to recognize and to find, shall we say, the healing for all, forgiveness. You understand, forgiveness clarifies what is self and what is other. The great teacher says to the crowds that are apparently murdering him, forgive them because they are ignorant. They are not in their right mind. They cannot see what they do will bring disaster to them. Because they have set themselves up above others. And in doing so, they open the door to the feeding frenzy of those elementals that feed on that particular source. So they bring about pride and superiority, as if there is one group chosen above all others. And when that occurs, then disaster must follow. It is consequential. Not that it requires others to build on that. You understand, if you are separate yourself out as a special group, then you are selected as some group to hate, because that is the nature. So both sides, you understand, from the point of view of the elemental kingdom, this is bringing balance into force. Otherwise, the energies in that field would escalate, not be transformed into something else.
So coming back to your comment around finding the center of your being, do you have any tips or advice on how we can discover the center of our being?
Always there is review. One cannot see oneself clearly until one looks for self. When one sees oneself as they are, without, shall we say, self-criticism or self-pride, one starts to see where one can improve, where one can support others, where one can belong, and in the belonging begin to lead to the degree one has, shall we say, found the pathway. One begins to share what one has discovered. In doing so, you begin to see yourself with greater clarity. Shall we say also perhaps one of the greatest meditations of all is simply to stop the internal chatter. The mind that continually comments on everything around. This is good and that is not good. This is bad. This person is my friend. This person is not my friend. You understand? All those commentaries cause the very thoughts that provoke them to arise as reality from which you are bound to respond to. You understand, the truth seems to prove itself. But what is the truth? You understand, if you stop the mind, and all the meditations in the world are attempting to stop the mind. You understand, silence is what is called golden. The silent mind, the silent, non-responsive, non-reactive will cause, shall we say, the anxiety, because anxiety is sitting on in a position where you are looking to see what will go wrong. You are asking yourself, this has wrong and that is wrong, and what can happen, and this is dangerous and that is dangerous. So what happens is you live on a world where you do nothing that is takes any form of risk, as if by doing so you will survive longer. But for what reason? You are not even already alive. You are living only by breath, but experience you are not having. And there is no purpose in, shall we say, engaging in the physical reality. And such anxiety will draw to it the very things that the mind is focusing upon. You understand? And so, as history goes, so many people see all around them, this person has got this problem, this cancer, this heart attack, this Alzheimer's, this arthritis, and these are my family, I will inherit, and so it becomes. And then you are clear that it is a genetically inherited problem. Not that you have been around this person for too long, or that you have an inherent connection to the thinking of your system. In other words, when one is born into a family, into a parent, one arrives not just from the physical body, but from, shall we say, the emotional and mental environments that are to that. And so you will carry those until they are released. Some people find it easy to let go. Others want to continue holding something. For how long? You say, I want this material, this product. I like it, and therefore I am going to consume it, even if I know it is not healthy for me. How can that possibly be? You understand, because something is driving that, and you think it is some, shall we say, taste bud in your mouth, not that it is some entity outside that is feeding off that response to the first taste, if you like, to the ecstasy that comes from it. So some people, shall we say, become addicted to all sorts of things. Shall we take an example? Fast cars. They become addicted not just to the fast cars, but to taking the ultimate risks. So that that feeling of aliveness arises. There are certainly entities that feed on that as well. You understand? So all of this means, shall we say, that there is an interplay between the physical experience and that of the inner planes of existence, right through, shall we say, to the higher mental components that can perceive what is happening. Once perception has opened, one generally begins to withdraw, and shall we say, withdrawing without awareness very often simply changes the pattern, shall we say. For example, one has been a meat eater for a year, all one's life, then one begins vegetarian, and with it becomes an element of superiority. And suddenly you are being consumed. All of it. When one has freed oneself from mental attachments and emotional responses of such ilk, shall we say, then usually you can, shall we say, eliminate the parasites.
So these parasites, would you say all or most of people that are experiencing the symptoms you talked about, the lack of energy or potentially disease or any disorders or ailments, is it likely that most of that is to do with these parasites?
The body cannot support itself without shall we say, enough psychic energy, psychic being, shall we say, in the fields that create physicality. In other words, the framework that causes the structure of the body to maintain its order, and the energy that keeps the processing taking place must have enough energy. Otherwise, the physicality will begin to distort. You understand? So it is not one or the other, it is all of them. Okay. So, shall we say, a person who is vital will not get sick. A person who has enough energy and will not allow themselves to roller coaster, shall we say, to spike in terms of their platform being on a high point and a low point, but can allow those flows of life to come and go without, shall we say, feeding them, then such will not attract, and as such will be able to maintain a consistency across their physical life. They will have vitality, and even in the processes, that is the orders that one has generally accepted, that is that people should in some regard look as their age shows. In reality, of course, this is also nonsense. Physical body is renewing itself on a regular basis, dependent on the damage that is caused in the inner modalities. In other words, one often wonders, why is it that if the body is renewing itself, why is it that a scar tissue remains as it was over time? Because, shall we say, the scar tissue is still in the mental, in the other words, in the blueprint of the structure. If one removes it from the blueprint, then it will rapidly dissolve away.
Before we go, can you just briefly touch on the role of natural therapies and how they can play a role in healing our bodies, like herbs or homeopathy? Or
you understand, of course, they are not working at the physical level as such. Even the herbs, which obviously have some effect on the human body at the physical realm, carry with them certain other, shall we say, components. One, in most cases, herbs and plants that heal things also carry mechanisms that are not appreciated by the parasites.
Okay.
The parasites dislike them more than anything. So they are encouraged to find another donor as such.
And is homeopathy similar?
Shall we say the homeopathy is not working at all at the physical level, but it is part of, shall we say, at the blueprint. So it is restructuring the old blueprints and many other, shall we call them, alternatives. There are patterns that impress, shall we call that, in a general sense, because healing hands and so forth have been in human consciousness for a very long time. But I call them all the reikis of these are patterns that interrupt and reset, shall we say, the blueprint. Let us give you a technology suggestion. If you have, shall we say, a viral infection, then you run a pattern that replaces all the instances of that viral attack in wherever it is. In other words, you replace it with what was there originally, and you eliminate the parasite. Yeah, understand? Of course, that is much more like the homeopathy and the reikis and some other also patterns. Some, shall we call them, psychic surgeries and so forth. All of these working, and as I have pointed out, the increase in technology is only a reminder of the possibilities for the human condition. You are waking up to the storage of knowledge that it is all shared. It is all available in the vast records. All you have to do is have the ability to tap in and the ability to search for what you are looking for within the records. Isn't that what your technology is doing? You are, of course, having to build machinery because you cannot as yet rely on your own consciousness. But that is what is coming as technology leaps forward. So I want to say, because one is in the changing, the fast changing world, technology is moving at an incredibly fast rate, because before, shall we say, the new species can take truly hold, such as to be ingrained into the system. That does not mean that one implants mechanisms into the body. Although there are those that would like this, it would be, shall we say, less than efficient and could only ever tap into the, shall we say, the technological records. If human beings can evolve enough, they will tap in directly into the Kasha records, which will show, shall we say, the history of the universe as it was.
Fascinating. Very interesting.
Of course, a new subject altogether. I want to perhaps just complete our health discussion, because like all things, one creates the reality one is expecting. So let us begin to look for what is blocking one's ideal. What are the ideas and thoughts and beliefs that block your ideal version? And work to eliminate those, to free yourself up from the influences of those around you. You will always, shall we say, collectively connect to those that hold similar viewpoints. As such, they are a great resource. If you can see what they are holding, because it's easier to see someone else, then look to yourself. Are you holding the same ideas? Are you as rigid as your friends?
Yeah.
All of those things point, and then you are in the position of, shall we say, changing yourself, and of much more importance, you are leading your group to evolve. Better that someone else benefits, even better than if you benefit yourself.
Yeah.
You understand, that is one of the greatest principles of all. If you help another, truly help another, then the benefits that you gain for yourself, not that that is why you are doing it, it is just part of the resolution. So being, shall we say, a leader for your fellow beings, and loving the failings even of those, you understand, loving those through their failings, always looking to uplift and support. That is what love is.
Yeah. Thank you. Very interesting. Thank you so much for your time today. Is there anything else you'd like to mention before we wrap it up?
That is enough for today.
Thank you.
I want to perhaps say there may be far more questions in this realm have spoken about.
Definitely.
Then
I agree.
thank you for your time and your work in consciousness. Then thank you and good.
Thank you. Thank you.